Hi guys, welcome back. This episode 3, and we will learn about the job in US design and the type of it. Also, which choice you should choose when in a US design. Okay, this they will talk about um the responsibility, the mission that you have to do as a US design. So let's get started.
We've explored the different types of UX designers. Over the course of this program, you'll become much more familiar with the most important tasks that UX designers do. You might even be drawn to a particular path or specialty. To get started, let's identify some typical responsibilities of entry-level UX designers: researching, wireframing, prototyping, creating information architecture, and communicating effectively. Entry-level UX designers start their careers by doing a lot of tasks to learn the basics. One of those tasks might be research. UX designers use research to understand audiences and learn about their backgrounds, demographics like age and location, motivations, pain points, emotions, and life goals. There's a lot to learn about users and their preferences, and UX designers want to discover as much as they can in order to inform their product's design. An entry-level designer also creates wireframes. A wireframe is an outline or a sketch of a product or a screen. It helps the designer figure out how a page is arranged, where each piece of a product fits in with the others, and how users will likely interact with the product. Wireframing is one of the first steps designers take when building a new product or feature. It's done after or at the same time as the research. We can wireframe by drawing on paper or digitally on a computer. Here are some examples of wireframes I've done. This is for a web page on Google's transparency report. Notice that they're just basic drawings, but you can tell what goes where. These wireframes were designed to demonstrate the basic structure of the page to gain support from key stakeholders, people with a business interest in the final product. A UX designer will also create prototypes. A prototype is an early model of a product that demonstrates functionality like a wireframe, but a lot more advanced. While a wireframe gives you a general idea of where things go and how the product will function, a prototype illustrates a progression from one screen to the next. We can draw prototypes on paper, create a physical prototype, or build a digital prototype. Here's a prototype for Google's transparency report that I created. And here's the final version. The purpose of wireframes and prototypes is to figure out the best design for a product, inexpensively and quickly. Another responsibility of an entry-level UX designer might include creating the information architecture, which is the framework of a website or how it's organized, categorized, and structured. For example, when you click the File menu on a word processing application like Google Docs, you expect certain options like New or Print to appear in the drop-down menu. Or when you click on the company's homepage, you expect to find a link to an About page. That structure is the website's information architecture. Finally, an entry-level UX design job, like many jobs, also requires a lot of communication, like meetings with colleagues, writing emails, creating proposals, or pitching clients. So in short, entry-level UX designers should know how to research, wireframe, prototype, create information architecture, and communicate effectively. Your exact responsibilities will vary depending on where you work and how specialized you need to be for your particular job.
Mm, Next is the video about the type
Hi
of the
again. So
uh,
far, we've
US
learned about
design.
some of the tasks an entry-level UX designer might do each day. We've also mentioned that your role might differ depending on where you work. In this video, we'll explain the differences between generalist, specialist, and T-shaped roles in UX design. A generalist is a UX designer with a broad number of responsibilities. Most UX designers begin their careers this way, doing various tasks. For example, you might do a bit of interaction design work, a bit of visual design work, and more. One benefit of being a generalist is that you get to try out roles and find a specialty that you're passionate about. Generalist UX designers are common at smaller companies with fewer employees, as these companies don't have big design departments, so you might have to wear many hats. A generalist might be responsible for a combination of user research, branding, user flows, UX writing, visual design, prototyping, production design, information architecture, and usability testing, among other things. Most generalists start their roles knowing about one or two of these topics. They learn about other areas on the job from their colleagues or mentors. UX generalists can also continue their education through professional development, doing their own research to keep up with industry trends, and participating in online UX communities to learn from other designers. On the other hand, if you become really interested in one part of UX design, you might find your niche as a specialist. A specialist dives deep into one particular UX design role, like interaction, visual, or motion design. While a generalist has a breadth of knowledge, a specialist has more depth of knowledge in one kind of UX design. Specialists usually work at large companies where the organization can afford to have a big team of UX designers. At Google, we have thousands of specialized UX designers. Take me, for example. I specialize in interaction design. We covered some specialist tracks earlier in the course. If you need a refresher, check out the glossary. As you advance in your career, you may become a T-shaped designer. A T-shaped designer specializes in one kind of UX design and has a breadth of knowledge in other areas. This is called a T-shaped designer because your skills look like an uppercase T. The vertical line of the T is the kind of UX design you specialize in, like visual design. The horizontal line across the top of the T includes your complementary skills. These skills might come from other fields like interaction design that cross over with your specialties or soft skills that help you work more effectively. Becoming a specialist or generalist isn't always a conscious choice. It might be based entirely on where you work and what skills are needed. When I started in UX design, I was a motion graphics designer. Then I worked on video games, apps for businesses, and apps about financial technology. Now that I work at Google, I focus on privacy as an interaction designer. The more experience you get in the industry, the broader your perspective. You'll be exposed to a lot of different companies, design principles, and work styles, and you'll learn how each one can better inform your designs. As a UX designer, there's always room to grow and opportunities for change. So whether you become a generalist or a specialist, there are plenty of options.
Next is a video talk about UX design today.
My name is Dane, and I'm a visual designer at Google. The life of a UX designer at Google is pretty interesting and really fun. So when you're working on a product, you'll either be drafting up a new solution or a new feature of that product, or you'll be building upon something that already exists and finding a way to improve it. You'll start by identifying the problems. What are the issues going on within this product, and why are we even looking to improve or introduce this feature? And once you start to find those problems, you'll start to realize what the solution is and why it needs to be done a certain way. You chat with other people on your team to see what solutions could be feasible, and you get to work. You're going to be interacting with everybody on your team. There are other visual designers that you can chat with. There are researchers that can tell you what has been decided in the past and what hasn't been explored yet. There's also interaction designers who can tell you, oh, well, this page should move in this way, or this should happen as soon as you tap this button. This is an opportunity to get the feedback that you really need to be able to push your project to success. Once you go into a UX critique session, you'll present that to the team, and that's when you'll start to get really high-level feedback as to how the interaction should change or how it can be improved for the success of the product. When you're a full-time UX designer, you're going to expect a lot of critiques, a lot of UX critiques that help contribute to the success of the product. And what's really important is to remember that it never has anything to do with you as the designer. It just has to do with the solution and how we can collectively make sure it's the best that it could possibly be. And as soon as you come to a solution, that's when you go in and you chat with the higher ups and the leads to see if this is a solution that's ready to be implemented. And once you get the pass for it to be implemented, you then start passing it on to engineers who will be able to build out your solution, and then you get to see it come to life. As a visual designer, being able to create something that's going to impact other people every single day. And because I'm focusing on the front-facing visuals, it's our job to determine how this is going to look and how it's going to work for people. And I think having that impact and having that role is pretty important and pretty meaningful as a UX designer.
This is also another high-level UX design. Talk about
My name is
detail.
Erica, and I'm a senior visual designer. A visual designer is someone who uses iconography, typography, color, space, and textures in their products to create consistent and accessible design patterns. For example, if you were to look at an app, pretty much anything you see on the surface, the buttons, the colors, the typography, the white space around all of those elements is what a visual designer would be responsible for. During my last year of college, I worked at a web design and development agency where I got a ton of experience with graphic design and actually UX design before I even knew what that was. From there, I went to work at a startup called Waze before they were acquired by Google. And there I was hired just as a general designer where I worked on things like our website, our app, designing little icons, illustration, research. I was considered a generalist and I worked on a lot of different design roles. From there, we were acquired by Google, and so my role became a little bit more formalized. And I was technically a UI designer, but I still was a generalist, and I worked a lot on marketing design, the app UX, and as well as a lot of web design for things like dashboards and analytics. I kind of branched out to the visual design path at Google, and that's what I've been ever since for the last few years. As a generalist designer, you work on a bunch of different things, from interaction design and visual design to user research. This would typically happen at maybe a startup or an agency where you work on a variety of different projects. And your responsibility depends on whatever hat you need to wear that day. Some of the benefits of being a generalist designer are that you can learn a ton, and oftentimes this will be in like a fast-paced environment, so you don't really have time to stop and really go deep into any of these roles. Rather, you just learn by doing, and it's a really quick and effective way of seeing what all the possibilities are within UX. At bigger companies, there are specialist designers. For instance, at Google, there are interaction designers, visual designers, UX engineers, UX writers, and UX researchers. For these roles, the expectations are a little bit more clear for you. So you'll be evaluated based on what work you're doing specifically within a product. So a UX writer will be responsible for all of the copy and all of the strings throughout any product you might see. And they are, within their team, known to be the expert in their field. The benefits of being a specialist are that the expectations are very clear for what your role is, and there are a ton of resources that you can continue to just develop your expertise. And what I like about being a specialist is that I know that anyone on my team trusts and knows my work and can come to me with any of their visual design problems. Having been both a generalist and a specialist, I've really, really enjoyed both. And especially earlier on in my career, being a generalist, it was a really good way for me to ramp up on all things UX. I got to work on such a variety of projects, and it really, really helped me hone my craft. Once I had been in the UX space for a while, I realized that I really was kind of more drawn to visual design challenges, and that's what kind of led me along the visual design path. And so now, being a specialist, it feels good to know that you're kind of an expert in your field, and so I can definitely see the benefits in both being a generalist and a specialist, and maybe more so being a generalist when you're first starting out.
There's some type of grading part that you guys can read if you want. Just post the video. Let's talk about this video award, but in more detailed way. In a detail, yeah. So it's my have fun. This is another video.
So far, you've learned about common responsibilities of UX designers and the types of roles that UX designers might have. But, like many people, UX designers don't work alone. They work on cross-functional teams that might include other designers, engineers, researchers, product leads, or program managers. In this video, we'll discuss how these cross-functional teams work together to build a product. Imagine you're working on an app for ordering food. You and your team want to build a new feature that shows users restaurants that offer allergen-free meals. The product lead decides the scope of the project. The UX researcher tries to understand user trust, like whether users will trust the information about allergens or trust the app itself. The interaction designer figures out the flow for ordering, like how to include allergen-free foods in the search filter. The visual designer thinks about how to make it easy for users to find allergen-free foods in the product. These UX designers create wireframes and prototypes to show the experience that users will have in the app. The engineers bring these wireframes and prototypes to life and create ways for restaurants to each add information about their allergen-free options. As you might have noticed, it's important for UX designers to collaborate with engineers because engineers build the final product. This collaboration happens throughout the entire process. There are multiple opportunities for UX designers and engineers to provide feedback to each other to make their changes together. There are a lot of moving parts here. This is where the program manager comes in, to ensure clear and timely communication across the team. So the process of building useful apps moves smoothly from start to finish. Every team and team member has a different task to complete, but ultimately, they all have the same goal: to build a product that's usable, useful, equitable, and enjoyable for users and businesses.
Here's another Reddit burst. We didn't have any work or assignment thought about doing this in real estate, right? I think in the second module we have. So anyway, this another reading part. The reading part just provide you guys more in detailed way. So if you guys want, you can read it. Just pause the video. This practice is not have anything. It's just a self question and answer.
Welcome back. So far, we've discussed why user experience is important, the job responsibilities of a UX designer, and the teams that UX designers often work with. Now we're going to explain the types of companies you could work at as a UX designer, and how your job may differ depending on that company's size and industry. Say you're hired by a startup or a small business. First, what's a startup? Well, in simple terms, a startup is a new business that wants to develop a unique product or service and bring it to market. Startups generally have tight budgets and few employees, so each person has to perform a variety of jobs and move quickly. If you're a UX designer at a startup or other small businesses, you'll likely be a generalist. Designers at companies with fewer employees get involved in many parts of the business. You might be responsible for both interaction and visual design, conduct user research, or even help with marketing. Talk about having a lot of jobs to do. Working at a startup or small business can be stressful, but also very rewarding. You'll learn quickly, so it can be a great way to launch your career. Another job a lot of UX designers start out in is freelance. Freelancers work for themselves and market their services to businesses to find customers. As a freelancer, you get to pick projects that interest you, make your own schedule, and work with a lot of different brands. Another common place UX designers work is at advertising agencies. Advertising agencies are teams of creatives hired by clients to build marketing campaigns. For example, a beverage company might hire an ad agency to create a campaign for a new soda. As a UX designer, you might be responsible for developing wireframes and designs for digital products for the new campaign. You may also do work that's outside of the usual UX design tasks, like graphic design or writing. Working at an ad agency is a lot like freelancing in that you get to work with a bunch of different brands, but you'll be employed by the agency instead of being self-employed, and you'll be part of a team. Design agencies and design studios are another option for jobs. A design agency provides a one-stop shop for the look of brands, products, and services. They're usually more specialized than ad agencies because they focus on design and branding. Your average day working at a design agency is a lot like working at a startup. You'll probably be a generalist and the only designer on the project. You'll be exposed to a lot of different industries and get to solve unique problems. But since design agencies work with multiple clients, you might not work on a project from beginning to end. UX designers at design agencies regularly move between teams and work on different stages of a product's development. Finally, you can work as a UX designer at a big company like Google. Big companies have thousands of employees working on lots of different projects. UX designers are typically specialized in their work and focus on one project from beginning to end. Working at a big company is a great way to learn about a specialization within UX design. Plus, you get to learn from other experts. One trade-off is that you might have fewer options to gain skills outside of your specific role, so a desire to specialize is key.
This is the reading part. So that's it. This is the end of this episode. If you get one, just ask more or anything that. Um, to be honest, if you guys are doing two job and just work like um US design as a second job, I kind of recommend you guys to become freelance. Anyway, this is the end of it. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.